Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's meeting of the Strategic Policy and Resources Committee. We have apologies from the convener, Councillor Murray Lyle, who is being substituted by Councillor Kathleen Baird. Are there any other apologies or substitutions? No? Okay. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest from elected members. Do any elected members have any declarations of interest to make with regard to any items on today's agenda? No? Okay, thank you. Item 3 on our agenda is minutes of previous meetings. 3.1 is the minute of the meeting of the Strategic Policy and Resources Committee of 28th November 2018 for approval and signature. Can we agree to that, please? Thank you. Do you want me to sign them just now? Or? Okay. Item 3.2 is the minute of the meeting of the Appeals Subcommittee of the Strategic Policy and Resources Committee of 10th of December 2008 for noting. Can we agree to note that minute? Thank you. Item 3.3 is the minute of the meeting of the Corporate Health and Safety and Wellbeing Consultative Committee of 17th September 2018 for noting. Can we agree to note that? Thank you. Item 3.4 is the minute of the meeting of the Employees Joint Consultative Committee of 27th September, again for noting. Agreed, thank you. Item 3.5 is the minute of the meeting of the Perth Kinross Integration Joint Board of 28th September for noting. Can we agree to note that? Thank you. And finally, item 3.6 is the minute of the meeting of the Perth City Development Board of 14th of November 2017 for noting. Can we agree to note that? Thank you. Item 4 is the revenue budget.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I just ask perhaps why the last meeting you referred to, the Perth City Development Board, meeting of the 14th of November 2017, why has that taken so long to come forward for noting?
I'll ask the Director of the Environment Service to respond to that, or the Deputy Chief Executive. I think it was because of delays with the announcement of the T-City deal and meetings that would have coincided with that, but I can get that answered officially for you. Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, because of the T-City deal, because of a few other things, there hasn't been a Perth City Development Board since that date. There have been a couple of virtual meetings, but there hasn't been a full meeting since that date. This was the first opportunity it could come back to this committee.
Okay. So that takes us to item 4, which is the Revenue Budget 2018-19 Monitoring Report number 3. And can I ask the Council's Head of Finance, Stuart Mackenzie, to introduce the report? Thank you. Stuart.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and good morning, Councillors. The projected net underspend on service budgets is currently £3.82 million, which represents 1.41% of net service expenditure. This represents a significant movement from the position reported to committee in November and brings the current monitoring more into line with trends in recent years. The main movements are highlighted in section 2 of the report and detailed in appendix 2. The movement in projected expenditure largely reflects additional income, staff slippage and the rephasing of expenditure between years. Proposals for carrying forward resources under the Budget Flexibility Scheme will be submitted to Council on the 20th of February as part of the Provisional Revenue Budget Report. The committee is requested to note the receipt of additional funding totalling approximately £1.75 million, as set out in section 2.2 and appendix 3, and to approve the adjustments set out in 2.3. Proposed movements and reserves are detailed in section 2.4 of the report. This includes adjustments to reflect the delivery of the transformation programme, the phasing of the REACH project, and proposed application of £918,000 of reserves to meet expenditure in health and social care, £400,000 of which has previously been approved by the Executive Subcommittee in August. As set out in section 3 and appendix 5, the current net projected overspend on the Perth Kinross Integration Joint Board is £615,000, a reduction of almost £1.4 million from the position reported to committee in November. This reflects both the application of reserves and anticipated savings from the financial recovery plan. The housing revenue account remains at break-even, with additional income allowing for increased expenditure on housing capital. Including health and social care, the total net projected underspend on the General Fund revenue budget is currently £3.813 million, or 1.1% of the net budget. Happy to take questions, Vice Convener.
Thanks very much, Mr Mackenzie. Are there any questions? Okay. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Looking at page 37 of this report, the movement in the net predicted underspends in housing and the environment, I noticed that there's some significant underspends in items that were administration priorities, such as the rural business broadband support, the small town retail facade, and other items like the creative exchange. I wondered if we could get a bit of detail about what the background is, if there's any common factor to the delays in those areas. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask the Director of the Environment Service, or Housing and Environment Service, to respond to that?
Okay, thank you, Convener, thank you, Councillor Bailey, for your question. There are a number of things, and it's not the same thing that is causing, the degree of underspend within the projects. Firstly, in terms of rural broadband, there is an ongoing commitment by the Council to work with our rural communities in delivering broadband, and there has been some successes over the course of the last year. However, in working with that, and then also working through, the R100 project, then we would want to carry on with the funding that we've got and working, as communities or individuals approach us in relation to that. In relation to the creative exchange, it's actually income that we are getting. Edrington, agreed that they would pay us £60,000 a year for 10 years. So that is just putting the money into reserves so that we can use it when the creative exchange is open. In relation to the other bits of slippage, the Perth and Kinross routes, we are working in partnership with another organisation, and there is some, delay in terms of, that and how we're working together. And the other, issues, partly it's due to officer time, but again, in engaging with communities about what communities want for that, the spend.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, can I just follow on from Councillor Bailey's comments? Because what we have here, and it's on page 37, there's 4 funds. The Rural Business Expansion Support Scheme, the Perth and Kinross routes, Town Centre Management, and the Small Town Retail Facade Scheme, where the narrative at the time was, we're open for business. Can I just, to say that we're open for business in small towns, can I just ask and confirm that not a single penny has yet been spent on these funds, and indeed on each of these 4 funds we don't even as yet have any criteria? But it's not a criticism of officers.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Donaldson. I would respond simply by saying yes, we are open to business. I think things like the Heart 200 route, the launch of that initiative is imminent within a matter of weeks. I would acknowledge that there have been issues of capacity and in terms of designing some of these schemes, and we would put our hands up to that. But can I ask, again, the Director of the Housing and Environment Service to respond to the specific questions that you raised?
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, for the question. No, there has been some spend, on the rural business expansion support. The overall budget was 100,000. There's been some £14,000 spent on that, within that. And as I've already said, in relation to the Perth and Kinross routes, then we have a number, we are working with partners, and that has caused the delay. And again, and as I have already said, the town centre management, the small town rural facade, retail facade, we are continuing to, ensure that the criteria is fit for purpose, working with, a small team. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I wonder if I could just add to Director Renton's answer, specifically in relation to the Rural Business Expansion Feasibility Support Scheme. Councillor Donaldson will no doubt recall that at the last meeting of the SPNR, just in the minutes that we've just agreed there, we agreed to change that into a Rural Micro Enterprise Scheme. I'm going to be speaking about that later in the meeting, but just to update him that that scheme went live with the remaining £86,000 of the funding that was opened for applications in the week before Christmas. We've so far, in the weeks since early January, received 12 applications, 9 of which have been approved, 3 of which are just received and pending approval. The total grant allocated, if all of those were approved, from that remaining £86,000 would be £55,000, leaving £31,000 for the remainder of the budget for the year.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Parrott, did you want in?
Yes. Thank you, Vice Convener.
If anybody else is wanting to ask questions, can they kind of indicate? Councillor Ling afterwards, thank you.
I'm on page 41, paragraph 2.4.13 and 14. I understand that previously sums of money have been transferred to the, if you like, City Hall works in respect of Venels. I'm just asking if we can have clarification on what this additional £90,000 is for in respect of that, the City Hall work. And if I may, a second question on page 53 at the bottom. I note there's £330,000 of additional income from on and off street parking. That seems quite a large sum to be additional and, in a sense, unexpected if it's additional. Can I have clarification on, if you like, the source of that additional income? Thank you.
I think it might be parking fines, Andrew, but I'll let either the Director of Housing and Environment confirm or deny that. And I think in the meantime, the Deputy Chief Executive was going to address your query regarding the 90,000 in the City Hall.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor Parrott. The 90,000 is not additional money. It was money that was earmarked for the design, and it's just been transferred over into the appropriate pot. So it's just a financial transaction. It's not additional money. And I'll pass over to Mrs. Renton for the rest of the question.
Okay, in terms of car parking, obviously this goes straight into the car parking account. The additional income is for an increase both on income from on and off street car parking, but also penalty charge notices as well. So it's a combination of both.
Councillor Dugan.
Thank you, Vice Convener. It's page 43, paragraph 3.15, where it details the excess to budget of 300k in respect of council tax. It's not a big variance in terms of the entire council tax receipt, but it is a substantial variance in terms of the annual increase. So could I ask, it says later on in the explanation about that it's a combination of provisions for bad debts and increase in the base. Is there any indication that we can get from officers about how that's split? Roughly, obviously.
Stuart, are you able to help with that?
Thank you, Vice Convener. I think I'm going to refer this one to my colleague, Mr. Walker. I don't know if he's got the analysis here. That may feel like a hospital pass.
I'm happy to provide the information later on. We don't have it to hand, but we've got it split between discounts, exemptions, increase in growth, etc. So we can provide that.
Okay, that's fine, Vice Convener. And I wonder, though, could we see how that compares to previous years?
Are you able to provide the previous years in comparisons?
Even anecdotally or approximately?
Yeah, we have year-on-year monitoring, so we can do some analysis looking back the way.
Is this higher or lower? Is this exceptional or is it routine?
Oh, sorry, that's a similar level of growth from
That's
previous
fine.
years.
That's good, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lane, did I miss you? Apologies for that. Well, we'll see maybe.
The first one's really the underspend due to staff turnover in education and children's services, and I can understand that. Is there any particular reason or any particular areas that we're struggling to attract staff to?
Can I ask Sheena Devlin, the Director of Education, to respond to that?
Councillor Lynn, can you point me to the your reference in the report in relation to that? Thank you.
It's just on the staff costs on page 51, and it also is highlighted in 2.1.4.
2.1.4, yeah.
That's the extra, nearly 600,000. That was an increase on the projected underspend. I think that adds up then to the overall underspend of 1,716,000.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's three main areas that are accounting for that particular underspend. One is in relation to early years and the expansion in early years, and it wasn't about not being able to get people ultimately into these posts. It was about the time that it took to do that. So there was an initial delay, but now we understand is now not an issue in relation to early years. We have run with some central posts being unfilled for some considerable time, and those are now filled as of early January. And also within the recruitment of some posts within Children and Young People's Service that ran vacant for a longer period of time than we would have hoped. And those three areas are the main contributing factors to that underspend.
Supplementary, Councillor Ling?
Yeah, I understand that would be the majority, but I was just wondering if we do have, because of the inability to attract staff in certain science areas or anything like that, if we're working to fill these gaps, or if they are indeed there.
In terms of the underspend that's identified here and the staff slippage, those three areas that I've outlined contribute to the great majority of that amount. What continues to be challenging for us and for other local authorities across Scotland, sorry, I should clarify that these were not teacher posts in these three main areas. However, there is still an issue in some curricular subject areas that it does prove challenging to fill at the first advert, and we're finding that we are going out a couple of times to recruit into these posts.
Right, thank you. The second question was on 2.4.6 on page 40 of 126. It's about the underspend in modern apprentices, 65,000 to an earmarked reserve for future activity. Is this an earmarked reserve purely for any further activity on modern apprentices?
That's certainly my understanding. Sure.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'll just confirm that is the case, Councillor Lane, purely for MEs.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I will move the paper. The Revenue Monitoring Report sets out a projected underspend of 3.813 million. This is a significant improvement from the position reported to the committee in November 2018, and the Head of Finance has provided an explanation for this, which is very welcome movement. All council services now reporting projected underspends. The council will consider the use of these projected underspends when it discusses the revenue budget on 20th of February. I also welcome the significant improvement in the projected outturn for health and social care. There is a significant reduction in the projected overspend through the combination of the application of reserves and the actions of the financial recovery plan. As always, can I remind elected members that many of these figures included in the Revenue Monitoring Report are still projections that will undoubtedly be revised as the financial year draws to a conclusion. Once again, I'd like to place on record my thanks to officers across the whole of the Council for their continued management of our finances. This report underlines our strong reputation for prudent financial management and continues to place this council in a healthy financial position. And I'm happy to move. Can I ask Councillor Ros McCall to second that?
Thank you, Vice Convener. Yes, I'm happy to second this motion, this paper. It's always interesting to look at finance at a snapshot in time because you always get a varying picture. I think we're in an exceptional position, and I think all credit goes to our finance department and the running of the council to have us in this particular position. So I'm happy to second this motion.
Thank you for that. Are there any amendments? No? Can we agree to note the paper? Okay, thank you. Item 5 is the Composite Capital Budget 2018 to 28 and the Housing Revenue Account Capital Investment Programme 2018 to 2023, monitoring report number 3. And again, I'll ask the Head of Finance to introduce the report.
Thank you, Vice Convener. The gross budget for the 10-year composite programme is currently estimated at approximately £648 million. The movement from the position reported to committee in November being almost entirely due to the inclusion of an additional £40 million of Scottish Government funding for the Cross-Tier Link Road announced on the 7th of January. Section 3 summarises progress to date with the composite programme. Net expenditure to the 31st of December is approximately £28.7 million, or 60% of the revised budget. There are a number of proposed adjustments to service capital budgets, including a rephasing of structural maintenance works and the Creative Exchange project, additional investment in car parking provision, and a reduction of £742,000 in the Prudential Borrowing Programme, largely through savings in street lighting renewals. The inclusion of £10 million of Tay City's deal funding for the redevelopment of Perth City Hall has created capacity within the overall programme to proceed with the Perth Museum and Art Gallery project and Museum Collection Store, both of which have been rephased in line with their anticipated completion dates. All of these adjustments are reflected in Appendices 1 and 2 to the report. Section 4 and Appendix 3 sets out progress of the Housing Capital Investment Programme. The budget for the programme is currently estimated at approximately £58.7 million. In setting the updated Housing Revenue Account Capital Programme on the 23rd of January, the Housing and Communities Committee approved moving £18.5 million of resources from the current programme into future years, largely to support new council house building. Net expenditure on the Housing Capital Programme to the 31st of December is £12.2 million, or 64% of a revised budget, whilst the projected outturn for 2018-19 is 137% of the original budget due to the acceleration of expenditure into the current year. Happy to take questions, Vice Convener.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions? Councillor Lane and then Councillor McCall.
Thanks. It's 3.2.3 on page 70. Would it be fair to characterise the rephasing of the Blairgowrie Recreation Centre project, moving funds from 2018-19 to 2019 as a delay in the project? Has the project been pushed further out because of the planning stage or because of other reasons?
My understanding was that the consideration of the Blairgowrie Capital Project, or Blairgowrie Recreation Centre Capital Project, was to be part of this year's budget process, taking into account the position with regard to the Tay Cities deal funding. So, okay, Councillor McCall.
Could I have some clarity on that, please, Convener? Tay Cities deal funding was affecting, the capital budget was set with the Blairgowrie Recreation Centre in the October budget, and I was just wondering why we're moving money from 18-19 to 19-20 in this paper.
Okay, can I ask the Director of Education to respond to that? Thank you. Greg.
Councillor Lane, obviously you're familiar with some of the consultation we did as part of the Blairgowrie recreational project development. Obviously part of that debate was regarding the 6th lane. I'm hoping to have a decision on that 6th lane on the 20th of February when the project team will be ready to roll, whether that's a 5 lane or a 6 lane. So then the project will move forward at that point.
Thank you. Just for clarity, the decision and the moving forward this project, this money is dependent on the decision of the budget and capital budget decisions on the 20th of February, not on the budget decisions that were taken in October last year.
The movement of the allocated budget is based on the potential spending plan rather than to do with the totality of the budget. The decision really is about the final scope of the project, whether it is including additional lane. And obviously there has been slippage on the project.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've got Councillor McCall and then Councillor Dugan and then Councillor Parrott.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. If you may, just a couple of questions. I'm referring to page 71, 337, with the rural flood mitigation programme. Obviously, that's very important in my ward, with the Comrie one progressing. And I noticed that it is coming forward earlier than anticipated. Is that due to the fact that we have learned some lessons from the first one, or are we is it just the way the process has and we're coming ahead of schedule?
Okay, can I ask the Director of the Housing and Environment Service to respond to that?
Okay, thank you for the question. We would always do a lessons learned from any major project, and we've already, started on that process, in terms of all of our flood schemes. This it relates to early work with public utilities, which will take place in 1920, with the main contract still as planned for 2021-22.
Thank you. And if I may, just another question, basically on the Ochterarder car parking. I'm glad to see that this is in there. I'm glad to see that we're moving ahead with this. It's very, very important for the people of Ochterarder. And I was just wondering if we have got any sort of time frames in this, because obviously the land issue is important. So I'm just wondering if we're any further forward on the time frames for this.
We're continuing to negotiate, and the estates team are working on that, on a regular basis. And as soon as we've got that completed, then we will move to adding the spaces into Ochterarder.
Excellent to hear. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dugan.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. Following on from Councillor McCall's comments about things that are very, very important for local people, I can't see any reference within the paper to any planned or anticipated or aspirational investment in a new leisure centre for Perth in PH2O. Can you confirm that that doesn't feature anywhere in this plan?
It's not included in our capital programme at the present moment in time.
I wonder, Vice Convener, if there's any possibility that you could give an indication to the people of Perth what the ambitions of this administration are in that regard.
And I think our ambitions in that regard will become clear on the budget setting day of this council.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Parrott.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm on page 72, the first bullet at para 3.3.12. I note the reduction of £150,000 in the Energy Conservation and Carbon Reduction Programme, which it strikes me as because targets have been achieved. Might it not have been possible to spend that money and achieve more in terms of the energy reduction targets? Overachieve. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Councillor Parrott. Is exactly the question that I asked, and I would sympathise with you with regard to the wording of that part of the report. This is with regard to spend to save measures, essentially the heating and energy efficiency of the council buildings. Basically, we have achieved all the spend to save efficiencies that we can with the budget that is available, and to progress any other measures wouldn't have the required payback time. If there's anything within that I haven't quite covered, I can ask Barbara Renton to expand upon that.
No need to expand. That's what You know,
Okay.
sort of that is the issue. It's because we've achieved the, the payback period, or there is no sufficient payback period.
Okay, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. Page 89 is Appendix 2. It's very small type, but at the very top, I'm coming back to Ammon Bank, the flooding scheme. It states it's effectively 4.5 million capital spend to the end of March this year, and then nothing thereafter. Am I not right in saying, though, that there's still quite extensive landscaping work to be done on that project? And that becomes apparent if you look at, go over the pedestrian bridge at Lochte.
So can you clarify whether the sort of phasing of the spend matches
My
the...
understanding is that the works will be complete by the end of March, but we can check that for you, Councillor Donaldson.
The reason I ask is because this clearly has, the Ammon Bank project clearly has consequentials for the Comrie scheme, and Comrie is in a conservation area, so the work and the landscaping is going to be absolutely crucial in Comrie, and it doesn't seem to have been carried out yet in Ammon Bank.
We can have a discussion later about that, I think. Thank you.
But at this present moment in time, the works are on schedule. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? No. I'll now move the report. The report provides a summary of the continued excellent progress towards the delivery of our capital budget. Officers across the Council continue to roll out significant levels of capital investment in our assets and infrastructure. The Head of Finance provided elected members with an overview of the report earlier. The committee will be aware of the recent additional funding towards the Cross-Tay Link Road, which is very welcome. The additional £40 million completes the required funding package and allows us to take forward this hugely important infrastructure project for both Perth and Kinross and the wider Tay-Cities deal. I'd also like, in his absence, to thank Councillor Lyle and express this committee's appreciation of the work that he has done with regard to securing the Tay-Cities, or not the Tay-Cities deal, but the £40 million for the Cross-Tay Link Road. And I also think if Councillor Lyle was here today, he would want to express his gratitude to Councillor Dugan for pursuing that £40 million through his political channels. So I think we should commend both of those councillors for securing an excellent outcome for Perth and Kinross. A further £10 million has been made available to support industrial developments across the Tay-Cities area, and I look forward to working with all our partners to deliver on this huge investment for the benefit of the whole area. Further updates on this and recent funding and the whole of the Tay-Cities deal investment will be reported to future meetings of this committee, and I'm happy to move. Can I ask my co-vice convener, Councillor Stewart, to second?
I'm happy to formally second that paper.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments? Can we agree the paper? Thank you. Which takes us to item 6, which is the transformation programme update, and the Deputy Chief Executive, Jim Valentine, will speak to this report.
Thank you, Convener. This report gives an update on Phase 4 of the transformation programme and reports on the 16 current live projects at the end of December 2018. It gives an overview of the progress to date and identifies those on target and those with issues and/or risks which have been managed by project boards and reported as appropriate to the Corporate Transformation Board. One project was completed as of 31st of December 2018, the Community Green Space Review. A review of non-cash benefits and learning from the project and process will be undertaken in 2019, but it should be noted that no savings were attached to this project. As part of ongoing shared governance and monitoring of the transformation projects hosted by the Health and Social Care Partnership, but originally funded through PKC transformation monies, 4 projects have been jointly reviewed in November 2018, and an overview of these projects is reflected in the paper. We have included in the report further positive progress of our smart energy network through the Can Do Innovation Challenge Fund process. This is a national fund which supports Scottish public sector organisations to find and develop innovative solutions to operational service and policy delivery challenges. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Jim. Councillor Purvis.
Thank you, Convener. My question relates to the online services and my account review on page 108. I think it's very welcome to see the progress that has been made in this area, and I've certainly been encouraging people in my ward to start using the MyPKC service online to report things, and I've used it myself and very impressed with the speed of the response that we get for things like that. I have mentioned to the Deputy Chief Executive before and at committee about the possibility of a Perth Kinross Council app, which would further enhance this ability for us to move from face-to-face conversations and telephone conversations to online reporting, and thus reducing administration costs as well. I think, you know, an app that people could use to take photos of potholes and fly tipping and instantly send them straight across while the service online is fantastic. I think that would be the next step. So I was just wondering if any work had been done on that, or if not, could that be something that we look at?
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor Furves. I think an app is part of the next step. What we're trying to do just now is make sure that each service has the maximum digital capacity that it can have, and then we'll look at other issues as they occur. I think we will look at the app in parallel, but at this moment in time, the website's what we've been concentrating on and trying to get that into as many services as possible.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Dugan and then Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Vice Convener. It's page 110 at the bottom where it discusses the risks that are present within the review of catering services with a central production unit. We had safe to say, a fairly unsatisfactory paper to lifelong learning just last week. And we weren't able to be assured in any way, shape or form about the carbon emissions involved in this change. Interestingly, one of the things that's come up from the universally poor reception this proposal's had from members of the public, particularly parents, is that where are the costs, the capital costs of purchasing the vehicles that are going to have to distribute this frozen food across Perth and Kinross, and the salary costs of their drivers featured in the alleged saving that we're supposed to be achieving through this?
Okay, can I ask Sheena, Devlin and Greg to respond to the questions you've raised?
Councillor Dugan, obviously the transport of meals happens throughout Perth and Kinross. So obviously as part of taking the project forward, which was obviously only agreed last week, obviously the transport arrangements throughout Perth and Kinross still obviously to be worked out in detail. But potentially there could be reductions in the transport throughout Perth and Kinross due to obviously the meals being frozen and kept on site and delivered as and when required.
So, I'm not trying to be obtuse, Vice Convener. I don't understand how you can take every school meal from Dundee to a school in Perth. I accept that for the moment, not every school kitchen is a production kitchen, so some kitchens produce meals for other schools currently in Perth and Kinross, and they will need transported. But when you have to transport every meal, albeit in bulk, that can't possibly lead to a reduction in transportation.
Greg,
probably just to respond. Obviously, it's very early stages of the project. We are due to come back to committee on following the consultancy work. So at this point, I could probably just say that we're at very early stages exactly what that model will look like in the detail.
I accept that, Vice Convener. I accept it's a difficult one for officers to be emphatic about. What I'm concerned about is that the detail is very sketchy, but the alleged savings seem to be very definite, and those two positions are totally incompatible.
It seems to me, Councillor Dugan, that there will be concrete savings in terms of the the cost of the meals being produced and comparisons to the alternative means of producing the meals, or perhaps even not being able to produce the number of meals required through the expansion of early years and childcare. I don't know if there's anything further that either the Director or Greg can elaborate on. No, okay. In which case, Councillor Dugan, I think we just have to take your concerns on board and continue to scrutinise the proposals as they're developed. Are there, Councillor Ling, you were going to ask a question.
That was just, if you indulge me, it was a supplementary to that. I know that we have vehicles that will deliver the meals, but are they refrigerated vehicles? Do we deliver frozen meals just now, or will it be totally new fleet? Because if we're delivering that amount, obviously in summer and that, the vehicles will have to be refrigerated, which are a lot more expensive than ordinary vans that are being used just now.
The meals would have to be suitable for transporting frozen meals and keeping them at safe temperatures, yeah.
But what I'm saying is that's different vehicles than what were used just now, so it'd be new vehicles we'd need.
I don't know whether it's new vehicles or not. Do we know anything about the vehicle requirements for the project?
I suppose once the details obviously finalised, obviously this will be subject to probably an attender. So at this point, we won't know exactly what the vehicles will be.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks.
As it will all be, the information and all the details of this will be brought forward. So.
Can I ask my question now, please, Councillor?
Oh, you had done?
No, that was a supplementary. I was just interested.
Oh, right, Grant. Well, you don't getting a supplementary to somebody else's question is not normally the way we operate. You know.
But I knew you would indulge me. My question is on the review of care packages, and I'll just need some explanation, and I'll be my turn to be obtuse. I'm reading through the savings that can be achieved, and I understand all that, but it's the line on page 117 of 126, or the paragraph that starts, it is recommended this project is terminated on the 31st of March 2019, and a work stream initiated to review complex care and make recommendations regarding a financially sustainable model. I would just like some clarity, because I don't understand what that is.
Can I ask, it would be Diane or Rob that would respond to that?
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you, Councillor Lang. We have been looking recently at the financial position for the Integration Joint Board overall, and one of the greatest cost pressures that we have within the social care side of our budget is complex care. Now, you'll understand that the people who are in receipt of these packages of care often have extremely complex needs, and there's a very close link between the NHS and the Council in terms of setting up a package of care, setting up expectations with families, and then looking at their changing needs as time goes by. So the Chief Executive has issued a challenge to us to look nationally to see where best practice might lie. And so the adjustment of this project is moving to a very specific piece of work that we'll be looking for can I say, really quite innovative ways of managing people's needs in the future. So this might then move into collaborative working with housing and environment over housing with complex needs patients and the support that they require, looking at core and cluster type of working. This will then reduce the dependency on individual packages of care that could be spread to the four winds in different parts of the county. And obviously it will help us to think about people who at the moment have to move outside of our area to meet their specific needs. So it's a complex piece of work that the Integration Joint Board will do, bringing together the health elements that set up the package of care in the first place, and then the long-term sustainability of those packages of care for the changing needs of people.
Thanks.
Good. Are there any other questions? No. In moving the paper, can I say that finding new ways of doing things and transforming the services and support we offer to our local residents continues to be a priority for this council. We will continue to explore opportunities to improve and deliver services to meet the needs of our population, and this report summarises our progress so far, highlighting the key achievements and those areas that continue to challenge us and I commend this report to the committee. Can I ask my co-vice convener to second?
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm happy to formally second the paper.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments? Can we agree the paper?
Convener, Vice Convener, you can record, we can agree the paper, I believe, but you can do so and record the SNP's dissent regards the Central Production Unit, because in our view, it's completely incompetent to have extremely defined savings and hugely vague costs.
Your dissent will be noted. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I can't offer Councillor Dugan any direct answers to the questions he raised, but his point on the environmental aspect of this proposal I think is valid. But I did wonder, as we were debating this, whether large lorries driving to the far reaches of Perth and Kinross to deliver ingredients to school, who will no longer have to do that after this is implemented, there may well be a saving or reduction in the green gas emissions from those vehicles. So there are two sides to this, and I would ask them to consider that. And in regard to the vehicles, and I suspect that this will come back a future Tayside Contracts Committee, of which Councillor Dugan and I are both members, and I think we'll get some clarity then.
Might I also add that, just for clarity for Councillor Dugan, he might like to speak to his SNP colleagues on Clackmannanshire and Glasgow City Council, who've successfully rolled out this model, are delivering, as far as I understand from reading reports, very good quality food to schools whilst making substantial savings.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, that takes us on to the private part of our agenda. So could we ask members of the public and the press to leave? Thank you.